Welcome to Moe's!
Check out our menu. Choose from a variety of fresh ingredients. Check out our salsa. Watch your burrito being made. Enjoy. Moe's knows catering, burritos, tacos, and more.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome to Moe's Southwest Grill here in Cameron Village. Drew Blevins alongside Mike Gazzillo for the final edition of this season's Over the Boards with Mike Gazzillo. As always, glad to be joined by the man behind the mustache, head coach Mike Gazzillo. Coach, thanks for being with us one more time this season.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, we have to thank our sponsors, Moe's South Grill, for being such a gracious host throughout the entirety of the season. This is the first time we've shot live on location, and they've been a tremendous host. You can visit them at 919.catering.moes.com or call them at 919-999-3999. Coach, let's go ahead and get right into it. You start off the ACCHL tournament by receiving the regular season championship trophy, which is something that NC State has become quite accustomed to doing. This is an entire class of freshmen all the way to seniors now who have held that trophy in their hands year after year after year after year. They've never lost it. What are those emotions as you win a trophy like that consistently?
For me, for most of the guys, it's like, don't touch it. They don't really even want to see it. Thanks. It's something we talk about from before we actually start playing games. And, for the guys that have been around a while, they know what it takes to get that done. And for the newer guys, to see it actually come through, I think it has like a special meaning to it, But, again, it's a nice little ceremony, but we really want to just start playing. So nobody touches it, and they don't want to see it till the end of the weekend.
It's another high regular season win total for you and your squad as you head into that tournament. Can you talk about how you felt about the body of the work leading into the ACCHL tournament?
You're talking about the practices and stuff?
The practices, the games, the results, and just how the ebb and flow of the season had gone.
Yeah, I mean, we had a great season. We lost a couple of games. It's going to happen. I thought we had a really good week of practice going into it. The guys were really focused. They had their own. I had a meeting with them. They had their own meeting just amongst the players. The seniors pretty much led it, from what I understand. Everybody knew what was at stake. The guys were pretty much dialed in. We did a few things in the rink. We put some borders up, so we kind of shrunk the ice surface we were playing on because we knew we were going into an NHL-size rink. And so, anytime you add new dynamics, new drills and stuff like that, sometimes there's a little bit of a learning curve. But we really didn't have a situation like that. The guys adapted to it pretty well. They were all pretty excited about it. And like I said, we had a good 2 weeks. We worked on as many things as we could in that 2 weeks, from shootout shots to system play, playing with a smaller neutral zone. There's only so much you can do in 2 hours, but I think we covered a lot.
Going into the tournament, NC State had the good fortune of drawing a team that was fairly near and dear to them, and that being the Charlotte 49ers, a team that is in your division, in the Carolina division. You're going to have to go up and play them in the 1-8 primetime matchup in Virginia. You had talked about in the last show, when you see a team like Charlotte on your schedule, you're not necessarily going to overlook them because they always give NC State a good hockey game, it seems, and that even goes back dating to when they were an out-of-conference opponent. And now they're in here, and that was a very interesting hockey game because State go ahead, took a lead, fairly sizable lead. Charlotte comes back and storms back, and you're in a 2-goal hockey game going into the second intermission before ultimately wrapping that up with an 8-3 victory. It's a very interesting hockey game, but what did you think of Charlotte and the way they played?
I mean, Charlotte's a real good team. I've said it before. We played them the first time this season, and it was kind of a blowout. But I told the guys that's not really indicative of what they're about. And then when we went down to Charlotte a couple weeks later, it was an 8-7 game, right? And again, we were up, and then they caught us, and it was a little bit of back and forth. So, we pretty much knew what to expect. A lot of the guys know guys from there, from playing hockey in the area or whatever. And we knew that they had booked their. They didn't even know that they were definitely in, and they already had their hotel booked. So that gives you a mindset of where they're at.
It was a quick scoring game for NC State. Sam Banashevitz had a Sam Banashevitz game. He tallied a couple. Jack McDonald had one to sort of put the icing on the cake. But aside from the goals, really the story of that game was the penalties and getting used to the officiating in that hockey game. Most notably, a 10-minute major against Joey Hall, misconduct penalty, and it was just penalty after penalty after penalty. It was an interestingly officiated tournament throughout the entirety of the weekend. What was your view of how the officials were doing in that hockey game, and what was the challenge of playing with such a strictly officiated hockey game?
Interesting is your word. I have other words. The penalties were 14-3. Seems a little ridiculously one-sided to me. When you're, especially in a tournament game, you got to play in. Still, we came in first, but that Friday night's a play-in, and so there was a lot at stake. I told the guys, we kind of saw the way things were going and some of the calls that were made, and I mean, there were some things that I thought were let go on both teams, and then there were some things that I just couldn't believe were called. Basically I told the guys, you can't have two enemies out there. You can't play against two opponents. You can't worry about what the officials are going to do, and don't give them a chance to give you, bang you for another 2 or a 10 or something like that. Don't say a word to them. Just keep your mouth shut and just go out and play. And, I probably was a little louder than I should have been at times, but you can only really take so much. I mean, there just comes a point where, I know I'm going to lose. Let's put it this way. That's a conversation I'm going to lose. No official's ever going to come up to you and say, you know what, you were right, I shouldn't have made that call, I'll give you another one back. But, there comes a point where there's only so much you're going to take, And I thought the guys showed a lot of self-control, the way they handled themselves in that game.
Sam Banashevitz comes out of the intermission break after the second intermission, up 5-3, ends up sealing that game with a 6-3 goal. Jack McDonald follows it up. Just spectacular offense to go ahead and wrap up the victory in the play-in game, essentially. But then, wouldn't you know it, waiting for you in the semifinal, it just seems all too fitting, is your arch rival, the North Carolina Tar Heels, a team that has been a real bugaboo to solve in the past couple of years, a team that won the ACCHL championship last year. Fortunate weekend or not, they took home the Admirals Cup. And now you have to play them again in Virginia for a chance to take your rightful spot in that ACCHL championship game. When you found out you were going to be playing North Carolina, what was your immediate thought?
I really don't care who it is. It doesn't matter. You can't let the opponent or outside emotions consume you in a game like that, and that's the message I was trying to get across to the guys. It doesn't really matter who it is. They're coming to play, and so regardless of who it is, just put your best foot forward and don't get involved in anything stupid at the end of the game, which it didn't get to. So, yeah, personally, I really didn't care who we played.
Your boys certainly started off fast, not quite 30 seconds into the hockey game. The first goal of the game goes in. There's really no looking back offensively except for the last few minutes in the third period when North Carolina clawed their way back into the hockey game, going to the intermission at a 3-2 score, which is one of those interesting scores in hockey. It's just enough to keep you on your toes, but you want to make sure that you execute coming out of the intermission and make sure you keep going forward, even though you are up a goal. When you saw that score and when you saw Carolina claw back, what was the message to the team?
Just keep playing your game. Play like you're down. That's one thing I tell the guys a lot. Play like you're down. Don't play like you have a lead. Don't play with the lead. Don't try to, control the game with the lead. Just, if you were down and it meant getting in, what would you put into the game? Okay, so you should play no different, whether you have the lead or you don't. And, they all know what's at stake. They had their meetings, and we give them time to talk about things in the locker room. I'm not in there the whole time. I really didn't think it was a situation where I had to really tell them much at that particular point. If you don't know what's going on at that particular point, you really shouldn't be there, right?
Absolutely. NC State ends up coming out in the third period again, finishes off the North Carolina Tar Heels, most notably on Sam Banishevitz, who always seems to be Johnny on the spot, chopping down a clear-out pass, shoots it in the back of the empty net, and that is going to take you guys to the Admirals Cup final. But you had the first game, and you knew that you were either going to be playing George Washington or the hometown Virginia. Virginia, of course, the team that is packing in 800 and 900 fans consistently. Who would you have rather played without considering the result that ultimately happened?
Don't care. Again, it doesn't really matter. You know going into it, if you want it, go get it. And you know the other team's is not gonna look and say, oh wow, that was a first place team we're playing. We'll just go home. That's not gonna happen. So I don't really care. Look, we've played. I know the way the crowds are in our place when people come in. And we've gone to a couple of buildings where they're just as hostile, but not in like a nasty kind of way, towards us, towards me. I mean, that's all kind of in sport, you know. So if we played Virginia and they had that, I mean, we had a lot of people with us too. So I think that kind of would have been a little bit of an interesting dynamic. But I really didn't care at all who I played.
The George Washington Colonials end up upsetting the number 2 seed, the Virginia Cavaliers, in their own building in overtime in what was an absolute thriller in ACCHL history. Dylan Cleary plays an excellent hockey game, so much to the point that it's Alec Astorga who gets the start in the game against NC State on Championship Sunday. And the Wolfpack have to come out and get rid of all the woes of championship games before in 2012 and 2013 and not making it in the prior year. The message to the guys is to go out and play your game, as you stated before, and NC State does exactly that. But coming out of the first intermission, they're down 3-2. Joey Hall allows 3 goals on 8 shots. Was there ever any thought about possibly switching up the roster, including the goaltender, or was it stay the course and play your game and try to ride that to victory?
You don't go that far and then change course. There's no panic. I didn't feel a sense of panic. I think if I were to do something like that, guys would have started to think if maybe I was like doubting them or something like that. So no, there was never a doubt in my mind as to changing lines or changing guys or changing goalies. And that's nothing against Brian or anybody else. It's just this is who we felt was the best, what we've gone with all year, and it hasn't let us down, and that's what we're going to do.
Pivotal moment was Joey Hall finding his game in the second and eventually the third period, and does come out in that game with a just over 80% save percentage. But starting the second period, it was no better than the end of the first, and eventually that game is 5-2 midway through the hockey game. You call timeout after the 5th goal goes in, and what were you telling your guys there?
I had reservations about that timeout too. It was just kind of looking around. Somebody said something to me about it. And on occasion, some guys will ask me if I want a timeout at times. But in looking at some of the faces, I figured it. Then I looked over at Jeff, and Jeff nodded, so I figured, okay, let's do that. The problem that you face when you take a timeout, when you get goals scored on you, to me, is twofold. First of all, you don't want to let the other team think that you're in any kind of disarray. And the second thing is, if you get back into it and you need that timeout at the end of the game, well, guess what? You don't have it. So, to me, it's a fine line on whether you take them. And we just told the guys, look, we were down before. It's no big deal. Just go out and play. We know. We just got it. You're not going to get it back right away. You got it one at a time. Just go one at a time, and that's pretty much what we did.
NC State does get it back one at a time. Power play goals really helped you in the latter parts of that second period, where you're able to come back and tie the hockey game 5-5 going into the third period. George Washington, Max Terhar nets his 4th goal of the game, his 3rd and 4th goals of the game, as the 6th and ultimately 8th goal, the icing on the cake. NC State falls short 8-7. You said in the post-game interview that you were happy with the way your team played. Now stepping back from it, even though the result is a loss, and it's another tough one in a championship game to not bring home the Admirals Cup, was that the best effort that team could have given on that day?
Yeah, because I went back and I watched the game, and I watched all their goals, and then I rewound it and I slowed it down to see what led up to that. I went, how did that go in? What happened? What led up to them getting possession of it and stuff like that. And, let's be realistic. There were some mistakes. There were definitely some mistakes with forechecking where we allowed them to get a chance to set stuff up. We allowed their guys. I told them don't let them fly to zone, and unfortunately, there were a couple of times where they let them fly to zone. But, we scored 7 goals, and we had a lot more scoring opportunities. We had a lot of good scoring opportunities, and we just didn't find the back of the net. And unfortunately, that happens sometimes. But, disappointed, yes, but I'm not upset with them. There's nobody that I could walk in and say, yeah, you didn't give everything you had. They did. I know they did. They tried to sneak Max Tahara on the ice a couple of times. They would just jump him off and just bring him up the boards so that we didn't see him going out with everybody else. So we picked up on that, and we were able to make some adjustments in personnel we had out there. It is what it is.
Well, NC State does drop that championship hockey game by a final count of 8-7. We'll take a short break here from Moe's Southwest Grill in Cameron Village, and when we come back, we'll have a couple of final thoughts about the championship game, as well as the seniors that you will be losing, possible freshmen that you could be bringing in, and what the schedule holds for next season. You're joining us for Over the Boards with Mike Gazzillo on Wolfpack Sports Television.
Welcome to Moe's! Check out our menu. Choose from a variety of fresh ingredients. Check out our salsa. Watch your burrito being made. Enjoy. Moe's Knows Catering, burritos, tacos, and more.
Welcome back to Over the Boards with Mike Gazzillo, the final segment of the final show of this 2015-2016 hockey season. The NC State Wolfpack are ACCHL regular season champions, ACCHL tournament runner-up. Coach, in the final few moments of that hockey game, Luis Jimenez spins a shot back on to Alec Astorga that magically finds its way in with 28 seconds to go in the hockey game. You did not have a timeout to call. But nonetheless, you keep Joey Hall pulled, and it's all about flooding that net with offense in those final 28 seconds. Did you see any parallel in those final 28 compared to what you had to do to try to beat North Carolina in the semifinal of the year prior?
I mean, I never gave that any thought whatsoever. That North Carolina game is so far from my memory. I don't even know that, I could tell you yes or no with it with a straight face. You're in the moment now. This is what you got to do, and just go out and, don't let the clock be your enemy. Just, you've got this amount of time to work on. If you worry about what the numbers are, you're not going to get anywhere. Just get pucks to the net, and let's see what happens.
Again, NC State falls 1 goal short of tying the ACC championship game. They lose 8-7 to the George Washington Colonials, which was, again, another outstanding hockey game when you look at it. Very entertaining to watch and certainly a joy to have covered. But stepping back, results and all, the season over. This is a very, very good hockey team that you have at NC State. This ties the fewest losses in school records. It would have competed with the most wins had games not been canceled due to meteorological events. But when you look at this team and this group, what was so special about them that gave them so much success?
I think some of the leadership, not only the captains, but just some of the other guys stepped into that leadership role. I know I kept asking how things were off the ice, how things were in the locker room, and everybody was like, yeah. So we didn't really have any issues. They were a team on and off the ice. They did a lot of stuff off ice together. They were a pretty fun group. We had some good times, as you usually do with these teams. But I think the guys just came down to practice. Rarely did we have guys miss that didn't have a legitimate reason, So they were willing to put the work in, and I really can't ask much more than that, right?
Absolutely. It's a very good hockey team that NC State will say goodbye to, and that is the tough part, is that there are guys who have played their last games in the red and white. Most notably is the team captain, Garrett Sunda, who does not get to return. His line mate, Danny Fredenberg, comes back for the first semester, from my understanding. But there are some other seniors, Simon Lecter back on defense, Sean Bly on defense, Andrew Cook on defense, Abbo Oliver, who only got to play for you for 1 year, but he will be leaving from the forward line as well. There are a lot of seniors that are leaving some holes in this lineup, what's it going to be like trying to not necessarily replace them, but get somebody of their caliber into their roster spot?
You know, we lost some of our leaders, but we still have some of our leaders. And even though Danny's going to be there half a semester, he's going to play a big part in putting that team on track for the entire season. Defense, I mean, that's a big loss. You know, three of your top 4 defensemen are leaving, so that's going to be interesting. Filling that void, spending the time with new defensemen, you know, the guys that are on the team, getting them to step up into taking those positions, those leadership roles, shutdown roles, and stuff like that. So that should be an interesting thing for us. You know, scoring, we still got Luis and Will and Sam coming back. So, I mean, that's a huge thing for us right now.
Are you planning on keeping them on the same line as you move forward?
Well, I mean, as of right now, we'll see what happens after tryouts and at the beginning. But, you know, right now, I'd be a fool not to, right? I mean, look at the year they had. But again, you know, we'll see how that all goes.
It really was a tremendous year scoring for NC State, making it into double digits in the goal tallies on a few occasions, most notably against Charlotte and High Point. But my question is, on the opposite end of scoring in the goal crease, is that you do have Calvin Stone, who is expected to be healthy, coming back and certainly hungry for playing time after losing what, in essence, is the entirety of the season. But you also have a very capable rising sophomore goalie in Joey Hall, who proved that he can play at an elevated level when called upon. What's it going to be like on a night-in, night-out basis determining who's going to be in the 4x6?
That's a great question. I really have no idea how that's going to work. You're right. I mean, Calvin was jonesing for hockey the whole season, and it just did not work out well for him. And but he'll be back. Excuse me. He'll be back for the season. It'll be his final season. Joey. I mean, Joey, we know what he can do, and he knows what he can do. So Brian did a great job for us. You know, you don't want to overlook him. And there's a couple of goalies that have contacted me about, you know, getting into school and wanting to play. So, you know, we'll go to the tryouts and we'll see what happens. And best case scenario would be a situation I had when I had Murback and Camaris. You guys figure it out. Let me know. If you can't work it out, I'll get involved. Because it didn't really matter to me or the team who was in net. We had that much confidence in both of them. So if we have another situation like that and they can work it out, I mean, that would be phenomenal.
Well, with the way Joey Hall has played and with the way we saw Calvin Stone get to play in the few games we have seen him appear in the nets, it certainly looks like it could be one of those blissful situations once again. It would be about personalities off the ice as well, and both of them seem to be fairly agreeable characters.
Yeah, I don't foresee any issue with that at all.
It will certainly be exciting to see what NC State brings back to the goal creases. This has been a school that has historically produced great goaltenders. That's even dating back to Sean Kudrick's days before I was here. So a lot of outstanding things going on in the goal crease. But moving back to the scoring front, you talked about Sam Banishevitz and the rest of his line, who have one of the best years a line could possibly have in recent memory, challenged perhaps only by Sunda Fredenberg and Alec Engel from the year before. That's a top line that is not only dangerous in the conference, but is competing with being one of the more dangerous in the ACHA at large. Are you expecting that they're going to be able to duplicate that performance even against a fairly tough schedule?
I mean, I have no reason not to. You know, I think they're all pretty hungry to come back. I mean, I haven't talked to Will except for a couple of, you know, text messages about a few things. I saw Luis the other day, and he's anxious to come back, and we know Sam's anxious to come back. Talked to him several times. So, you know, when you know you had a good year and you know the league now a little bit better, I can't imagine that they're not going to come back hungry to establish some kind of dominance in the league.
Well, and talking about the league brings me to my next question about the scheduling. You know you're going to see North Carolina. You know you're going to see Charlotte. High Point once this year, from what sources have been telling me, Duke as well is going to be coming, Wake Forest, the traditional opponents, but perhaps the more interesting ones are the ones that you don't get to see at home, playing in a tournament against teams like Liberty and Louisville, who's going to be coming down to play in that tournament in Lynchburg, and then making the trip to Laurel, Maryland, and the famous Laurel Ice Gardens to take on the Georgetown Hoyas in the first true home or road game in a couple of years that you will have played those guys that is not considered in tournament. That's a hard schedule to play. What is that going to do for your team, especially now that they're going to get to be seeing a little bit better competition throughout the course of the regular season?
Yeah, well, you know, in addition to seeing Louisville and Liberty, Virginia Tech's going to be at that tournament. And when we go up to play Georgetown, we're playing University of Maryland. So there's a lot of good hockey on this schedule. I think the guys are going to be excited about playing the better teams. And I think they'll, you know, we're going to meet next week. I'll probably meet with the captains and the team officers, and then we're going to have a general sort of final meeting for the guys, and I'll let them know where we stand with the schedule and what the expectations are. Most of the guys that have played already kind of know, but the freshmen, I'll let them know what their expectations are. And you know, if you can't get excited for what you've done and who you're playing and where you can go, then this ain't the place for you.
Well, the interesting games on that schedule that stick out in my mind, Liberty is going to be a very good measuring stick, as they are perennially a top 3 contender in the Southeast Division portion of the ACHA Division II. But those other 2 games, Virginia Tech and Maryland, both of those teams are consistently highly ranked. Both of them on the road, chances for quality wins, not to mention both of those are former ACCHL teams. Do you need any more build-up than that to get your guys motivated to play against those teams, especially considering this is a year with a schedule like that you might be able to slide into an at-large bid for the regional tournament? Yeah,
well, you know, again, like I said, do you need any more of a reason? I mean, we'll just put it on paper, and that should speak for me. And right, again, so I don't remember exactly how high we were ranked. I think we were 12 or 13 possibly. And when you play in teams and you're playing these teams, you know, and you do well, and playing them away counts more if you win than playing them at home and winning. So, yeah, if we want to get ranked, then we want that opportunity and not have to worry about going in through the ACC and going in on our own. Then these are the things that you have to do. And I think the guys are certainly going to be up for the task.
It's an interesting schedule for NC State, and one of the more difficult that they've crafted in quite some time. And certainly, I'm sure you're very anxious to get back on the ice and start playing against some of these teams. When you do look at tryouts, though, because we did discuss that there are some holes to fill, when you go into those couple of days of tryouts and scrimmaging and watching guys do drills, what exactly are you looking for out of potential freshman players?
I really want to see how they compete with the guys that have been on the team, because that's more of a gauge of what they're going to be playing against than the other freshmen. Just how they handle themselves. They make mistakes. They make bad passes. They miss a shot. They don't get back. What's their state of mind? How do they recover from that? You know, I really don't need a guy who's banging his stick or blaming everybody for every mistake that he made. You know, guy makes a mistake, he gets knocked down. I want to see him get up, and I want to see him get back into play. I'm not looking for hotheads. Just looking for guys that are going to compete. You know, we'll kind of get an idea. We know what we've got, and we'll get an idea of where we, you know, what we look for in the guys that are down, and when we have to make our decisions on who stays and who goes.
So going into tryouts, is there any set number of freshmen you're trying to pull in, or is it just the guys that you feel are going to be able to best fill in a roster spot?
The more the merrier, and the top 15 forwards will make it, and the top 8 defensemen, and the top 3 goalies. And that's the same thing I tell everybody year in, year out.
Well, and Coach, the final goodbyes that you will have to be saying, and I don't know how broken up or how jubilated you will be about this, but Chris Lehman, who has been a play-by-play voice here at Wolfpack Sports Television, has called his last hockey game for NC State in the foreseeable future, as well as James Thomas, the technical director, who has served many, many games, as well as doing a couple of on-air appearances. But unfortunately, you're going to be stuck with me next year. How do you feel about that?
Like you said, unfortunate. Yeah, it should be a good year. I mean, I'll miss Chris. I knew it was his last game, and I would have liked to have gone to regionals for a lot of reasons, and one of the reasons was because he would have joined us, and that would have been nice. But, it didn't work out that way. Obviously, we wish him the best of luck. I told him if you need a reference or anything to let me know. Seems like a pretty sharp guy. I'm sure he's got a great career ahead of him. And as far as you go,
one more year, Coach.
One more year of blooper reels, right?
One more year, and then you're home free. Well, Coach, any last thoughts or final overviews of the season?
No, like I said, disappointed in the outcome, but not in the guys, not in the way they played, and not in what they put into the entire year. I mean, it was a phenomenal record, and they did a great job, and they're all to be commended. And we will definitely miss the seniors that are leaving. But one door closes and another one opens, right? And so that's what the guys got to look at, going into next year.
Well, we certainly are looking forward to another season of NC State hockey. But before we sign off for the final time on this show, I want to harken back to an interview you gave to our dear friend Logan Sims and your impersonation of Drew Blevins. So I'm going to take the opportunity now, if I can dig my little prop out here, to do my impersonation of Mike Gazzillo and all of his hockey guys. I think we're going to have a whole lot of fun next year, Coach. This is going to be an excellent year, and thank you for another great year of the show, and we're hoping to have another great year next year.
No problem. Can't wait to see you.
Coach, thanks so much for another great year of the show. Signing off for the final time for the man behind the mustache, Mike Gazzillo. I'm Drew Blevins. Thanks for joining us here. Another hearty thank you to our sponsor, Moe's Southwest Grill. Thank you to the location at Cameron Village for hosting us. Signing off for the final time for Mike Gazzillo, I'm Drew Blevins. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again next season.